Yeah, you can Google anything, but you can't Google like, hey, how should we think about the phylogeny of mammals or whatever? Like,
Right, right.
why do people say the earliest common ancestor was rodent-like, even though it was not a rodent?
Right, exactly. That's very common that people sort of use that language. So that, yeah, that is always, I was thinking about this in another respect recently. Like, it's funny you always do that, but I'm always mirroring you.
Oh,
You're always like 4 feet back,
oh,
telling me to get closer.
it might be because I have headphones,
Oh,
and so
maybe.
I,
Anyway,
yeah,
but
yes, I
I'm
have the
always,
headphones.
I'm
Yes.
always. Those are my headphones, aren't
Oh
they?
yeah. Yes, I have your headphones. Yes.
um, like I'm always looking for a magic bullet for this or that in a way, like, oh, if I just buy this book about, Baroque
Oof.
improvisation, then I'll, or, or like, along those lines. And then I know that really, you especially in the age of YouTube and Wikipedia and access to a lot of free educational materials, there's only
Yeah.
I know what the answer is. It's put the time in most of
Yeah.
the time. But on the other hand, I sometimes do wish I had access to a teacher again, like I used to.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's depending on the field. I mean, sometimes it seems like mathematicians have a magic bullet. That's why a lot of the breakthroughs happen by these very young people. But anything else, the biology discipline, it's just you have to learn it. It's not even Edisonian. It's a slog. At
Right,
first, you just have to learn it.
right.
So I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, and so like, how much
Sorry.
utility is there in like having a teacher that makes sure your mind is right, or while you're learning, you're still perpetrating good thinking or
Ah.
whatever.
Oh yeah, fair enough. I was
Like,
thinking.
why can't you just teach yourself? Because you just have to learn it, right? So read the book. You don't need the professor.
That's partly true, honestly.
Yeah.
Like you probably. I would hope that with the flourishing
The old
of
Matt Damon method.
yeah, God. Uh, well, that's arguably closer. Like there was like some hot rod French mathematician who was like in the 1700s or like Napoleonic era. I forget his name. Uh, some hotshot young guy, hot blood, who had all these proofs, and he would like do them in bars and taverns, and he like died in a duel when he was 25 or something, and he like dropped off the papers at some professors, and they were important mathematical proofs. He was advancing mathematics, and then he goes and gets in a fight and gets killed in a duel. Like, what are you doing? So it seems that young people and especially with mathematics, it's learn a few principles, and then the ones who have aptitude play with it.
Right.
That's why chemists and biologists and whatnot call it physics envy. You
Ah,
know,
interesting.
look at how young Einstein was. I mean, he's public the Annus Mirabilis, his miracle year of what 1905, I think, or was it 1915? 4 papers, 1 year, special and general relativity, and he was 25.
Same year?
Yeah,
Boy.
he did that, Brownian motion, the relativities, and one other I forget, photoelectric effect maybe. But like, most famously, I think general relativity had no um, references.
Whoa.
It was as is,
Wow.
pure math. Just
Wow. Straight off the dome.
dude, are you fucking kidding me? That is like superpower shit.
That's wild.
No references.
I was just listening to a interview with Roger Penrose,
Mm,
and that's something the interviewer asked him because he's still alive,
yeah,
and
Jesus.
it's something you have to ask mathematicians after their 30s. It's like,
Yeah,
how do you feel about being an old man? It's like,
yeah.
I mean,
Old man in a
even
young man's
yeah,
field.
yeah, exactly. Sort of even worse than quarterbacks. Yeah.
Partly, yeah. So it's you know what there, something Richard Feynman said. Speaking of physics envy, he said there's plenty of room at the bottom,
Hmm.
talking about phenomenon in the world, and I think that's very fitting to say, but it also puts a real insight into how he views the world, because when he says the bottom, what does he mean? He means epiphenomenon, things like evolution and chemistry and whatnot. There's plenty of room, but at the top, that's where he's talking about the hard physics.
Gotcha.
Like there's 4 fundamental forces.
Right.
There's, the quantum chromodynamics. We know there's this many particles and not some other. There's no extra room.
Yeah.
But he says at the bottom. I see it the other way
Yeah.
around.
Well, especially even
plenty
in
of
the
room at
word,
the top.
even in the word epiphenomenon, doesn't
Yeah.
that sort of imply aboveness?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And he didn't say it
Yeah.
in that phrase, but from his perspective, physics is at the top
Right.
and it's
right.
trickle down.
Right.
But I see it the other way around. I see electrons are very boring relative to evolution. An electron is incredibly easy to understand, and we have a very solid understanding of it. But talk to me about ecosystems. That's complex, and that's hard to figure out. And
Yeah.
math often won't help you. So
That reminds me. I mean, it's something. Well, it was a question that came to mind when we were talking on the deck just earlier.
Yeah.
You used the word complex, right? We were talking about rodents.
Oh, yeah.
And you said
Their
rodents
teeth.
have the most complex teeth of any mammal.
Mhm.
And I thought, complex, that's an interesting word. Is that something that needs defended? For
Oh.
instance, how do you define complexity?
Yeah.
Right? Or you're talking boring and interesting. This is something I've thought about too. Like, and it's right in the beginning of your last thing.
Yeah.
Like in the grand scheme, ultimately, maybe it ends up our universe, the one we live in.
Yeah.
Seems like some people who know better than me think it might just end up very boring, a homogeneous soup, right?
Heat, death, entropy.
Heat, death, entropy, right?
Yeah.
Everything's as spread out as it can get, and nothing interesting ever happens again.
That's
Maybe.
Yeah.
But this is our human, right? As humans, or I'll speak for myself, that's a little dark because I think stars are interesting.
Yeah.
And even more so than that, I think planets that have life are interesting. And
Yeah.
then even more so than that, I think occasionally megafauna is
Pretty dang interesting.
pretty dang interesting. I mean, more and more, I used to think more interesting than bacteria, but
Hey.
more and more, those little guys are pretty interesting too.
Aren't they? Yeah.
But these are all sort of subjective value statements. Boring,
Right.
interesting, complexity. I mean, you used, what's the language you used about particular ecos? You were talking about freshwater ecosystems, saying you said something most potent and valuable.
Yeah.
You might not have said valuable.
I think I did.
Yeah, value and potency. Yeah.
Bang for your buck in terms
But-
of ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very human sort of. Well, and we're skipping the very beginning. We can skip that.
Yeah.
And come back to it. But yeah, the words like complexity,
Potency. Yeah.
value. Why are our freshwater ecosystems more valuable than our other ecosystems?
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. So, I mean, this is part of the homework I gave you,
Yes.
unfortunately. Yeah, so in response to, defend yourself, Adam, saying that freshwater ecosystems are more potent. They carry a lot of ecosystem services and value and connection for a very small unit of area. So if you have multiple square kilometers of fairly homogeneous desert, like in the Sahara, right? They might look almost identical, whatever square kilometer it is. It's sand dunes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying sand dunes are not beautiful and not valuable, and they are valuable habitat for many things. But you run a freshwater ecosystem through that desert, and that freshwater ecosystem has many more species, and it can allow animals that would normally die of thirst in the desert with no freshwater ecosystem to go and get a drink of water and then live out there. And they also can provide a corridor for travel, migration up and down. not only the aquatic species, but for, four-legged ones as well. And they can provide a stopover for birds. Freshwater allows primary productivity to grow up. Plants need it. Things like that. I'm talking, of course, about the Nile, right? And that's the case everywhere.
Yeah, and I'm sort of thinking very abstractly, right? Trying to think of a good,
Right.
not that it needs, because we sort of know what we mean when we say
Right.
potency or interest, right?
Right.
But I'm trying to think like how would you sort of be more concrete, like interactions per time click, or
That's not a bad one. That's
like
not bad.
even chemically.
Yeah.
Right, even chemical reactions per clock tick.
Yeah, straight up.
You get more of them.
Yeah, that's
and then
not
you
bad.
could widen your
Species
lens a
per
little
unit
bit,
area.
and
Yeah.
even like more times this critter ate another critter,
Yeah.
or more times this critter had babies. Or,
Predator-prey interactions
Right.
per square unit of area per unit of time.
Right.
Primary productivity.
And even again, back to chemicals. Like if that's happening, like literally more DNA recombinations per time and unit of space.
There's more living matter right there.
Right.
And so another thing, interesting.
It's just more lifeful.
Yeah. And so something could be. So when I say a freshwater ecosystem, that's a very blanket term. I'm talking lakes. I'm talking deep water in lakes. I'm talking rivers. I'm talking ponds. What else? There's a biologist who once described the Amazon rainforest as a massive swamp 150 feet in the air, broken up into millions of tiny little units. Why is that? The bromeliad plant.
Right.
The way its leaves are set up, and there's thousands of species of bromeliads, right? The way its leaves are set up, it catches rain. And all those itty-bitty ponds are freshwater ecosystems that enhance the species value, right?
Right. Even before you got to something as pretty as the rainforest, I was sort of being cheeky in my head, and I was going to say, well, an upturned bottle cap in which a mosquito lays its eggs.
Or a poison dart frog takes its tadpoles up and drops it in, right? It could be a bottle cap, sure. That's a little pond. It's a mini universe.
Right. Right.
And so it's not just that something's rare. We do have examples of very rare ecosystems that are in some cases almost one-offs. Literally in this one cave, the bats come in and the guano is there and they poop, and the bats are in that sense the primary producers, right? Because it's their feces. It's a chemical, not a photosynthetic based ecosystem,
interesting.
Right?
Right. It doesn't get the sun except when the bats come in.
Yeah.
The bats get the sun.
Yeah. The bugs, the plants get the sun that feeds the bugs, that feeds the bats, that feeds the chemical.
That takes it into the cave. Yeah.
And so you have this massive ecosystem, but it literally only exists in that one cave. And sometimes it can be cave specific.
Species.
Yeah. Because that's the nature of caves. It's a pocket of living space inside of solid stone. And so, believe it or not, some of these species are literally one-off species. There's like a species of blind catfish in Thailand or something. Thailand has a lot of that karst geography, right? I think they literally know every member of that species because it lives in this one cave, and scientists, there's like 551 of this blind catfish. That is the entire species.
Wow.
Right? It's a freshwater ecosystem.
It'd be quite an exotic pet.
Yeah, that collector guy in Star Trek TNG who collected Data, Yeah, it's just like that.
Yeah, he's
Data,
got one
the
of
android.
those. Right, yeah, exactly.
Straight up, he would have one of those. Just because it's rare, therefore it's valuable. So when I say potency, I don't just mean rare, but it is rare. But it's the value and the fact that, especially rivers, they connect vast distances just by their physical nature. And so you have, Pacific Northwest, you have the salmon. The salmon changes everything. The forests are more productive next to the rivers because bears come and eat the fish. And I think bears shit in the woods. I think. I think. And so the forests are more productive because of the rivers, because of the fish.
Wow.
Then if the salmon weren't there, and my God, if the rivers weren't there, there's another example. They're called gallery forests. You'll see them in Eastern Africa and stuff. There'll be these little slivers, these tiny tendrils of forest that follow deep into the savanna along the banks of the river.
Oh, cool.
Because the land, there's not enough rainfall to support a forest. But the gallery forest can
It's a little snake forest.
Yes.
Tied to the river.
Yeah.
Neat.
Yeah. And it's also providing water to the wildebeests and the zebras and the giraffes and all that. And if that river wasn't there, maybe the land with food could support it, but there isn't enough water.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of ties. I talked about boreholes and watering station for animals.
Oh, yeah.
Migration
You didn't
routes
say
and
boreholes in there, I don't think.
No,
I would have
okay.
remembered that.
Yeah.
But you did talk about, I like to think of them as like wayside inns,
Yeah.
like in a D&D campaign
Yeah.
or like a fantasy novel.
Yeah, straight up.
The stop along the road.
Yeah.
Where you get
the
fed and watered.
Yeah, the animals are on a quest, and there's that last homely house. The
that's
light
right.
in the window,
Yeah.
the light in the doorway. I think that's such a beautiful thing because you are finding the animals at their most vulnerable. There's nothing more vulnerable than an animal on migration. It can't hide. It doesn't have any nests nearby.
I imagine the margins on its metabolism are razor thin.
Razor thin for some of them, especially these birds. A lot of times, like they'll sit there in mid-flight. They can lose half their body weight with some of them as they're crossing the planet. So if they get a headwind, they starve to death.
Right.
I can't make it. I don't have enough fat deposits.
If they lose 4 days or something, they might not make it.
Dead. I mean, it's bad enough. You'll see a lot of you in this part of the world after a series of cold snaps. You might see a lot of little dead birds on the ground, Oregon juncos and things like that, towhees. They died because they starved to death. It was too cold and they couldn't hibernate, and it was just like they're that marginal. Think of how bad it is for one on migration. You can't take a wrong turn.
Right.
So yeah, let's help out these animals.
And you did mention, we'd have to be sure that we weren't doing more harm than good.
Yeah, of course.
We'd have to be careful. I mean, I've seen, bird feeders or disease vector,
which they maybe could be. Yeah. But yeah, you'd have to do it. That's what the science is for.
Right.
Yeah. But I would think the motive.
That's why we got science.
Because hey, okay, first do no harm.
But yeah, also embedded in your whole list is should be clear to any sort of reasonable human that the tinkering, it's always sort of scary to tinker.
Yes.
But we've been the opposite of tinkering for hundreds of years already with disastrous consequences.
We've been tinkering with a sledgehammer that we're swinging around not even thinking about.
Right, with not even the intention of helping.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's
so
why
to say, oh, we probably shouldn't do this because we need to let nature take its course. Shut up.
It's impossible.
Right.
We are inside of our brains, strangely enough, we're stuck with something that is part of the universe, but not natural the way an ecosystem
I've
is.
always thought that was an interesting sort of dichotomy, not dichotomy, right? Like the human impact on the planet.
Yeah.
And
there's
then
the world, and then there's me, my brain, right?
Yeah, or our brains.
Yeah.
Right? Or the collective consequences of human civilization.
Yeah.
And so it always seems, just as a devil's advocate sort of guy, to call it unnatural seems wrong because I'm a product of evolution.
Yeah.
How could anything I do be unnatural?
Right.
If we destroy the planet and cause a mass extinction, well, that's just nature taking its course.
Right.
Because nature evolved me and all of my awful human compatriots and all of the ones that came before me.
Well, and in the long
run... But that's
run,
just sort of a silly semantic argument,
It is. Well,
What's
it's
natural?
like saying I didn't kill him. A piece of metal flying through the air hit him in his body, and it happened to end his life-supporting processes, and it happened to be released by these gases inside of a chamber that happened to be triggered by me pulling this lever. But I did not kill him. A bullet hit his body.
Well, but yeah,
I didn't do it. Nature did it. It's
nature
something that happened in the world. Then nature did it. Yeah,
nature did it because it evolved a brain that invented a gunpowder, and then the cannons, and then firearms.
Yep.
So.
And then the Glock.
So, yeah, I mean, it's silly to sort of quibble about it, but to say, to sort of put up some sort of like, fantastical, sort of fictional, you could see it in a video game or a movie or anything. Oh, technology versus nature, or, man versus the natural world.
Right.
But we're not products of evolution, which means everything we make aren't not products of evolution.
That's true. Yeah. And I mean, wouldn't it be interesting?
But it would be better to not kill the planet, is what it comes down to, I guess.
One would suppose.
Although I could quibble about that too.
You could?
I mean, in the very beginning of your deal, you admit the time scale. I mean,
yeah.
Obviously, what we're working with is infinity. So at the end, they're all extinct, including us.
Yeah.
So all of these mitigating factors, what is that? Is that for a little longer of a time of a more interesting universe?
Yeah, that's it. That's where it begins.
And a kinder death.
Yeah.
Ideally.
Yeah. Yep.
Kinder to life. And I mean, it sometimes makes me, I don't know anything about Peter Singer except that I think he was like the capacity to suffer dude, right?
Yeah, I've got problems with him. Yeah, I know.
Oh, okay.
I know.
Yeah, I haven't read him.
Familiar.
I haven't read him, but it makes me think of the capacity to suffer question, right? Like you said, in the time scale of infinity.
Yep.
No species lasts.
Yep. No universe lasts.
No universe lasts.
Whoops.
So, not to be like fatalistic or nihilistic or whatever.
Hey, guess what, asshole? Go ahead and be nihilistic and fatalistic. It still does end.
Yeah,
Go
exactly.
Ahead. Yeah.
So what do we want? We want a kinder death or a little longer, little... I mean, I think that's fair enough.
Yeah, I don't need any broader like, oh yeah, I'm going to last literally forever. No, leave that to the monotheists, and they don't act anymore differently about their own temporary concerns than I do. So I don't see any difference. And yeah, it's absolutely right to say, yeah, in the long run, we're all dead. And in a technical sense, all suffering will eventually come to an end, except in the sense that, well, since the universes are infinite, I guess all suffering is infinite as well. So
yeah, I'd have to check the math on that, but it sounds right.
I mean, you rip a hole in nothingness, and I think somethingness comes out, but
and vice versa. Yeah,
but
so
it doesn't.
What we're going for is like it'd be better to not lose the Tasmanian tiger or whatever.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, we all know it. Deep down, there's a resonance that happens between our conscious minds and evolved instincts, and looking at an animal that's suffering needlessly or not, and going, well, should I help, or should I say, well, in a million years nobody will remember this? Right. Okay, cool story, bro.
Yeah.
Then it would be very interesting to meet somebody who actually lived that and experienced the world in that sense. I mean, maybe the highest level of enlightenment might be like that, where it's like, I have no independent existence from the world. I am a natural phenomenon as much as water rolling
interdependent down with every other natural phenomenon.
Yeah.
Whole Indra's net.
That's what they say. And I've had ego dissolution like twice involuntarily in my life, and it was pretty cool.
Whoa.
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
The one time it was, I was looking at the veins moving on a caterpillar while I was working in a field, a mint farm, weeding by hand, and I realized that there's nothing magical between it and any other physical phenomenon. Like that the physics of the worm's body were the same as the physics of a passive non-living environment. So in a sense, what that did is to say the universe is alive, yes, but also that there's no distinction.
There's no difference between the lively and the
the
between
matter
the quick and the dead.
Yeah. And so to say that the physics of the worm's body are not alive is the same as saying that everything in the the whole universe is alive, because there's no hard line between those two.
Although we're gonna pretend there is most of the time.
You're kind of stuck with it,
right? Because we think a living planet and a living, a universe or a galaxy or a solar system with life in it is, to our taste, slightly more interesting.
I think so. Yeah.
And while there are living critters around that might or might not have the capacity for contentedness or the alternative, we might as well try to be kind.
And I think it's important to say that, like, enlightenment is not euphoria. It's not pleasure beyond all pleasures. That's not like that. It's beyond all pleasures and all pain, I think. Which is, I mean, that's what the Buddhists are always saying. But it's not. Oh, I got everything I want. It's not. It's not an infinite orgasm forever.
Yeah,
it's not. That.
It's funny too. Like, even the good ones always end up. I mean, given enough time, you've got the Western Pure Land, which is sort of just a heaven fantasy again.
It is.
Amida.
Yeah. Amida. Yeah. Help me, Amida.
And even, Taoism is a sort of interesting, based on some very interesting foundational texts.
Yeah.
Then eventually, has some.
Yeah.
Well, you shouldn't be able to have a Taoist wedding, but I think you can, right?
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make it.
Right.
Well, I shouldn't speak on it because I don't know anything about.
Fine, but like, think of it this way: like, you should be able to have a Taoist wedding between two water bears, two tardigrades, 5 million years ago on a little piece of moss somewhere in China, and go and attend that wedding, right? By the gods of Taoism. And they would go and see, there's nothing lesser about the little moss animal that lives and dies in a sea of infinity and is part of the infinity. So, like, do I know that these butterflies that are migrating down to Mexico and stuff have very tiny lives relative to my own? Yeah, I'm still going to put some sugar out for them.
Yeah.
I understand that they're going to be dead next year anyway, literally no matter what, but the sky is more beautiful for them in it, know? And it's a lesser world if they aren't, especially if I can fucking do something about it. I'm going to put some water out for gazelles on migration in East Africa, and I'm not going to put a dam across a goddamn river.
Right. And I've saved yellow jackets from pools. One of them stung me in the gut immediately.
Yeah. Right? How fitting. It was his nature.
And it didn't matter. Yeah. And there's like.
Yeah. And
saving a spider from the sink. There's no good to it, really, but.
Yeah. That's almost the point.
And then I've accidentally trod on slugs.
I think.
Or I don't mind that people put vermin traps out if they have a vermin problem.
I defend my farm from animals that would harm my farm.
Right.
So there's no contradiction there. Anybody who wants to snarkily be like, well, you say all life, blah, 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 but you pull weeds out of your garden. It's like, yeah, I know, bro. I know. Like there isn't a contradiction there because I'm a part of the whole. And me pulling the weeds out of my garden is a part of the whole. Just like a whale eating a shrimp.
Ghost fishing, on the other hand, sucks.
Yeah. And we know it does.
Yeah.
Because you can feel that resonance of like, well, something feels wrong about this. It feels wrong according to even my own evolved nature. Like, build your nets out of biodegradable material, please. Stop.
If fish are going to get caught in nets, it'd be nice if humans ate them.
At least,
that's where I'm at, I guess.
Oh boy, because the scale of it is to the point, like nobody's gonna sit there and be. I mean, we have overshot ecologically, and there is a mass extinction going on. One thing I forgot to say in the previous one of environmental solutions, or what did anti-industrialization?
It ended up being called anti-industrialization, which I thought was an interesting title, although it made more sense after you listened to it.
Yeah. because you have to counteract industrialization.
Right, you're
at
talking.
the
It's a
same time.
positive.
Yeah.
It's a positive. It's not. It's not some cartoonish or even real person who's. It's not a philosophical idea about being anti-industrialization.
That's correct.
It is a proactive or a sort of a fledgling list of a proactive program.
You know
for
what it's
being
like? It's like putting a radiator on your car. Well, why'd you have to do that? Well, because the engine gets hot. Well, so fucking what? If the engine gets too hot, it melts down and then the car won't go. Okay. Anti-industrialization is like a radiator on a car. I'm all for having that engine, but you have to do something to cool it down. And that's what all
Otherwise,
that
the car blows up.
car blows up, and it takes a lot of other shit with it.
Yeah.
You know, and oil and you know, spills on the and gasoline spills on the ground. And then what happens? Then the car doesn't go, and then humans spill out of the car like a clown car by the billions and go, I'm fucking hungry, and I'm cold, and I'm going to cut down every tree, and I'm going to kill every wild animal, and then you're really stuck with a dead ecosystem, a dead planet. So I am not anti-industrialist philosophically. You simply have to counteract its effects. And
Especially
honestly,
now that it's here.
yeah, because it ain't going anywhere.
Right.
And essentially what will happen is they talk about zero growth economies. Economic growth is kind of a psychological construct anyway. You know, hey, measure GDP however much you want. It's more about your mood.
It's all about the vibes.
Yeah, but it would balance out. I swear to God, like you simply go, okay, industrialization gives us this much more coefficient of productivity far above what humans can do with their hands, manual labor. So now human manual labor is not involved in making shoes and shirts and washing clothes by hand and smelting metal by hand and plowing fields by hand and doing all this other stuff. You take that extra time and you fold it right back into environmental protection, and it'll balance out. Whatever level your industrialization of efficiency is at, it'll always give you enough to take care of your home planet. Take that.
I'd like to see the proof on that one.
Yeah, do the math. Einstein. Like, you're right. I don't fucking know that for sure. Maybe there is some technology that, oh shit, you know, like, yes, it gives us infinite shoes, and it's like something like the replicator in Star Trek. Just, it's like a microwave and it'll give you food forever.
But you're saying
maybe you can't.
Whatever surplus we get from the efficiency of doing things
Yep.
industrially or massively or factorially.
Yeah, in factories, yeah.
In factories.
Yeah.
Is enough to actually take care of your shit.
Yeah.
Even though we've
We've never tried.
We've never tried.
But take that as an article of faith.
Sure. Might as well assume that's the case and do our best. Because the alternative is what we've been doing, which is just the opposite.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. You take the excess productivity and you cycle it into even more productivity and usually into financial instruments.
Exactly.
Hence the existence of billionaires.
Right.
The least necessary thing humans ever have invented is
billionaires.
a billionaire.
I think you mean philanthropists.
Yeah. They have a magic wand once you have a billionaire, and it lets you flick it and you create jobs with it.
Mm.
Hence our incredibly low unemployment rate. You know, it's just ludicrous. Like, it just gets recycled. What happens is that excess gets recycled into human insanity, and it just gets worse and worse.
Right. Well, it is an interesting point, though, because you know, me being a emotional, you know, sort of superficial thinker sometimes, you know, who plays video games, you know, I might find myself thinking industrialization is the devil. It's easy to think that.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, just sort of
just stop being industrial. Go back to
right.
pre-industrial
Not even
levels.
right. Like smart enough to know we can't undo it, but
Yeah.
thinking it's a sort of an unmitigated bad in a way, even though I realize
right
sort of that things can be more efficient when you specialize, and then you do this, and then
Right.
But anecdotally, it looks pretty bad.
Yeah.
For a lot of people,
It's done a lot of harm.
But yeah, it's sort of it's maybe I'm a dummy to think or say this, but even just hearing, you don't have to think about it that way. It's here, so obviously it's not much use to be some sort of abstractly principled against or for,
A Luddite?
But saying,
A
yeah,
Luddite?
exactly.
Yeah.
But saying, no, it's here, but also the excess it offers is enough to take care of all of the bad that it could do and has. Well, it's a
Right.
long road.
Not
long,
has done. You can't turn the clock back.
long road to hoe.
Yeah.
For the has done, but just that it has enough extra in it that it doesn't have to be necessarily.
Yeah.
Trying to think of better words for bad, but bad for the globe and the people on it at large.
Right, because otherwise you're stuck with almost a Mordor type situation of, well, industrialism is here to stay. It kills life. We're fucked because we can't get rid of industrialization. So that's it. End of story. It's just going to be what? More of the same?
Right.
Like it'll break at a certain point. So to say that it will give you enough excess in order to protect your environment as an article of faith truly is an article of faith, because you better try to pull it in that direction, because what's the alternative?
Right.
I mean, it is just like it is the end of the age of mammals, and the scale of environmental changes that are coming are not cosmetic. It's like most of Florida is flooded, guys. So now you have a bunch of refugees, things like that. An analogy I used something like 12 years ago at a talk at the castle. Muggs was there. I said that we've snipped so many threads on the web of life that it's now sagging against its own weight.
Mm.
So ecological connections, that some of which we don't even know they existed and couldn't describe them now because they're gone, have been cut. And it's going to take several million years for that to wash out in terms of the phylogenetic evolution of life on Earth. So we're losing species that we don't even know exist.
Right.
And that will have knock-on effects. So if you're not going to use the excess of industrialization for environmental protection, what else are you going to use it for?
Billionaires.
Sure. They don't even have much, the reason why I know we don't, the real reason how false this whole stack of lunacy is the lack of imagination of billionaires. If I had $1 billion, I'd make the news. They don't. They just get bigger houses and cars and stuff. And they're most of them are a real mess of it.
Yeah, the most interesting idiot pseudo billionaire is old Elon, I guess.
That's what I thought. Yeah, at least he fucks up and is like doing goofy dances.
Yeah,
on stage. Like, at least he's weird.
Yeah,
yeah. He's mildly.
But he's not all that creative.
No, he's
not.
He's
like, compared to the others, he at least makes the news for other reasons than being rich.
Yeah.
It's like, I put a thing in a car and then I sent the car somewhere. You know, and it's playing David Bowie or something. Like,
which that's cool.
Whatever.
Like, I'm fine with that. But even that is very media oriented, right?
Yeah.
Like if so I mean, for the sake of argument, imagine if Elon listened to the same one you just did, anti-industrialization, and he went, oh, well, I could do some of that. I could do that.
I wonder.
I could send out floating fish habitats by the millions, literally across the Pacific, with mangrove forests growing over the top and artificial kelp dangling at the bottom, and put cameras on it because it would give seabirds a place to nest, or like rest, not nest.
Everybody loves a live stream of the fucking.
Are you fucking kidding?
Eagles
I
or
want
the
to
puppies.
Do that. It's like the Kon-Tiki, except it's unmanned and it's all right. The currents are there. The fucking I've read the Kon-Tiki. That was an incredible story to read about. There's one famous anecdote. The dude was cooking breakfast. The dude is cooking breakfast on the Kon-Tiki, and flying fish come over, and he was sad that it missed the frying pan. Literally leaping out of the oven. He was like, damn it missed it by like
so
1
close.
inch. Literally.
So close.
Yeah. So if you started doing that by the thousands, you know what would happen? Because there's no people involved. You would start to see natural phenomenon that we haven't seen before. Because it's an unmanned, underwater and above water video camera. And it's like, whoa, what the fuck is that? These two turns are...
You know who could get on this is Cameron.
Yeah.
James Cameron
yeah,
would be
totally.
the first one you could sell on this sort of thing, probably, because he seems to have some passing interest in...
He does. He likes the ocean.
The ocean, at least. Yeah.
So, some of the so some of those solutions, and most of them aren't mine, are so goofily. They're.
I think the mangroves are my favorite. In fact, in my notes, I think more than once I have written down mangroves again. So not only once did I write down mangroves again.
Yeah, I have.
I think I wrote it down more than once.
I have the drawing of it right here if you want to see it. For you listeners, we're both right. It's the Battle of the Notebooks again. Here it is. But yeah, so like most of them are brute force kind of solutions. It's just like give a subsidy to fishermen to replace their plastic fishing nets with biodegradable ones, and then you've probably made a difference. There's nothing clever. They're clever. Some of them are clever, but there's nothing mathematically interesting about it.
Right, and that's something you said right in the beginning too. Is like, and I think it's important. Really, well, and it is something that people always say about their idea. Not always. Sometimes you can't say it. Sometimes you're advertising the opposite, in fact. But you do claim, like, nothing fancy about any of this. None of it's fancy or overly clever. It's all pretty much...
Yeah. Not that I know of.
Right. Dig a hole. Make a marsh.
Yeah. Like, what the fuck? It's...
Hang some rope.
Yeah.
Although, yeah, I do have...
So why couldn't a billionaire? You know, I talked about sponsoring species.
Right, yeah.
Know, like
I remember you mentioning
Taylor
that
Swift
to me a long time ago, too. I like that
Railroad.
idea.
And be like, hey, and give them names. When something with a name dies, that's real different than, the percentage of population went down by 1%.
But there's no good... I can't remember if we've done this on or off mic, or I've done it in my head a million times, but I used to think, and I was listening to that Chapo Alan Moore interview. Actually, it was just Menaker. It was just Will.
Just Will. Yeah, I have also listened to that.
Yeah, yes. But he was. I may have done this on mic before, but even Alan Moore was saying, "Oh, I think artists, creatives, magicians." People who change things in other people's minds,
right?
Including pretty much all the arts. I think, paraphrasing, but are important because culture, blah 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 blah. But I remember thinking, as a kid, oh boy, we really need a paradigm shift. What are we gonna do? Well, I guess media products have to change the culture.
Yeah.
And then reading Alan Moore's Swamp Thing as a 20-something-year-old and realizing it was 40 years old.
Yeah.
With its, radical environmentalism.
Yeah.
Or reading old sci-fi.
Yeah, no.
So how do you what kind of lever do you have to convince Taylor Swift that sponsoring an orca is a prestige item, How do you not trick, because it's a good idea and it is a good thing to do. So it's not a trick, but
you're not wrong. I mean, I feel that way. I read things I wrote myself, and against why we shouldn't invade Iraq, things like that. And you read it and you go, well.
Whose fucking pinky do I have to threaten to break? Or what kind of viral meme do I have to invent to convince pop stars that they need to invest their excess money instead of making more money on a perfume line.
Yeah. Yeah, you see that shit. I read an article about Johnny Depp and his spiral down, and I felt like he's the biggest loser I've ever read about.
Oh.
You know, like he spent $30,000 a week on wine at some point, drinking wine.
Yeah.
And like he's made billions of dollars, and this is what he's doing. Cool, bro. Well, if that's what making $1 billion entails, I'll pass. Speaking of billionaires not having imagination, so yeah,
Right.
you're not wrong. It's a strange one, and it kind of
But
gets,
you know, all of these have a problem like that. Some of them
Yes.
different flavor.
Of
like,
course.
because and it's not
plant
even
more
it's not,
trees.
It's not even really worth getting into a lot because that's not the point.
Mhm.
But you know, you're saying, well, to do this, you would just need to do this. Now, who's the you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're talking nation states, and then
Yeah, municipal governments.
municipal government.
Just
I
send
mean,
send your final effluent out and make a
those
swamp.
would be the easiest ones.
You could do it in
The
a
municipal
summer.
governments would be the easiest ones.
Yeah, give them a grant.
The transitioning your light water reactors to
Oh boy.
thorium reactors, or
Molten
your
salt
coal
reactors.
sorry, your molten salt reactors, or your
Yeah.
coal plants, or your you say, well, all you'd need to do is this, and then all you'd need to do is build these, and one or two out of every 10
Yeah.
would need to be dedicated carbon scrubbers. Well, it's all very well and good, but who's listening, and what kind of levers do we have?
I mean, that's what's been very helpful for my own personal struggles, especially in the context of biochar, because I brought up that, and that's very personal for me. I've been working on it since 2012, and directly since 2014. So that's 6-7 years now, and I'm not demonstrably closer. But with the molten salt reactor community and all that, lurking, I've been floating over it like a vulture. They express the exact same frustration that you just did,
right?
And they are meeting with senators and presidential candidates and all this other stuff.
Actually having conversations with people who arguably are slightly closer to the levers of whatever it is, power or political power.
Jim Kennedy and John Kutch almost got a molten salt reactor addendum into the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDA, which passes every year. Right? They almost got that done, and then it didn't happen. And so that would have been
the best example of like whatever they call the bullshit writers on unrelated things.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, the one that saves humanity. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
And so let's take what you were just talking about. Like, what do you do? What levers do you pull? See, because it's the old thing about like moral conundrums of like, okay, so there's 2 train cars coming down and one of them's gonna wreck. Do you do one where you're gonna sacrifice one person? You're gonna make the train run over one person who's tied up to save 6 riding in
the old trolley problem.
Yeah,
which apparently was really big on the internet this year. I don't know why, but yeah,
right. Well, it's because we're all facing downhill, and deep down subconsciously we're going, who's right? I don't want to be homeless, so I'm going to ignore this. I don't want to solve homelessness. I'm going to jump on the raft and push off anybody else who tries to get on. That's what's happening subconsciously between economic collapse and all this other shit, where it's who gets to live, not, what should we do to try to maximize everybody. So, where was I going with this?
Levers of power.
Yeah, so you're going to talk about levers of power. They are as close to an explicit lever of power as you can be. You're meeting with a senator, one of 50 people in an entire house of government who can pass or revoke or veto laws, right? They can turn a bill into a law in the Senate. So, and they themselves on a first name basis with senators and representatives.
Isn't it 100?
Yeah, it's 100. Yeah. But you know what I mean. They themselves are asking the exact same question you did.
Who's you? Who's we? Who's gonna do it? How do we do it?
Am I pulling on a fake lever?
Right.
Is it a false lever?
Right.
Am I yanking on something that doesn't exist?
It's like, I'm always thinking video games. I don't know why. I'm not even that big of a gamer, but you're in a room and there's like 4 ropes with grabbable rings on each of them, and only one of them,
Yeah.
a lot of them are fake pullers,
Yes.
fake levers.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they aren't levers, but you know what I'm saying.
The current situation and I don't mean this just in the United States, but all of Western civilization is like a sinking ship, and everybody's fighting over the tiller, right? That classic like pirate thing, right? They're fighting over who gets to control the tiller.
Meanwhile,
there's no connection from the tiller to the rudder, and the ship is sinking.
Meanwhile,
anyway.
It's taking on water.
Yeah,
so
literally,
you'd be better with buckets.
They're sitting there. Yeah, they're sitting, or better to just get in a lifeboat and head out. And so even like my criticism of Chapo is they have one lens that's the solution to all problems. It's like, well, we just need socialism, and then specifically socialized healthcare and whatnot. And I'm like, there's no connection to the tiller. You're fighting for voting control. You're fighting for governmental control over a government that has no connection, that has no. See, the line has been cut between the Senate, the presidency, the House of Representatives, and the judiciary, between that and meaningful policy on the ground. The United States is done. It's sinking. We are in the top.
You can even if you're the one spinning that wheel,
spin
it's
that
not
wheel however the
connected to
fuck
anything.
you want. You are making shit up, and if you happen to spin the wheel right and the ship kind of lists to the right,
it sure seems like.
Yeah, it's only coincidence, bro.
Yeah,
you had nothing to do with you spinning that wheel. So we are in the top archaeological level of America, of American archaeology. This is the level they'll dig down to and be like, these were the last bridges they built, right? Mm-hmm. They didn't. There's no new Roman roads or aqueducts or arches in the 500s. They didn't build anymore. There was a top level. We're in the equivalent of sub-Roman Britain. This is sub-American Cascadia. We're in it. This is it. Literally, I'm not joking. There's no new money coming out of Washington, D.C. because they're just printing it at this point. So levers. How do you pull levers talking about environmental protection and whatnot? I don't. This is the essence of governance. You have to know what the real levers are, how to pull them, and what those levers do. And sometimes the best thing to do is literally nothing. And it might actually be difficult to do nothing. Not that that's what I'm advocating, but go ahead, pass whatever fucking law you want in Washington, D.C. It makes absolutely no difference. It cannot. The ship will sink.
And yet it'd be nice if we could build some molten salt reactors.
Yeah.
And, like you say, take down some dams.
Take down some dams.
Reasonably and rational,
I'm gonna say this.
Rational gun control. It's a nice hand wavy word, but I get your point.
We're removing dams and we're getting better at it.
Yeah. So, but it usually takes like a institution as large as, well, I don't know, as large as what? As large as something to build. Yeah. To build a power plant.
I'm willing to say this because nobody listens. One of the fabulous things about this part of the world is there's a lot of radioactive contamination at the Hanford site.
Yeah.
And we also have a lot of hydroelectric dams. So there's your spark for your molten salt reactors, and there's your dams you can take out, and then the salmon come back. So that'll happen, which is nice. Other parts of the world have neither. We do. So we've inherited, through no fault of our own, an immense responsibility that actually has very little downside. You're getting rid of radioactive contamination,
Getting rid of your dams.
getting rid of the dams and restoring a freshwater ecosystem, and you're making well, with all that radioactivity, you can turn that into cheap electricity. Pretty good.
Pretty good.
And why would you have to consult a disintegrating federal government about that?
Well, how do we
How do we do that? Well, that's a physical consideration. That's
Right.
a physics problem, and that's very easy to do. And the nice thing about radioactivity, it's easy to find.
Right.
And there's enough thorium in the Mountain Pass mine, which is in the watershed of the Columbia River, to
as audacious and as sort of intimidating as it sounds. I guess it's probably not all that hard to build a molten salt reactor.
They did it without computers in the 1960s.
I mean, like, what's the equivalent? 4 Walmarts. I don't know. Like,
dude,
it's a lot of labor.
The reactor
materials.
The reactor chamber of the molten salt reactor experiment could.
How many experts do we need? How many foremen do we need on construction?
You need them,
but few, really.
But some of it
seems intimidating.
The steel though and the piping you can buy off the shelf at this point. Yeah, it's like, you need Hastelloy-N. You can buy Hastelloy-N off the shelf. But the chamber was.
If you were a billionaire, could you just build one?
Not with current federal governments.
Right.
They would come and shut you down.
Right.
But if, let's say, you were some James Bond villain billionaire with your private island underneath the sea, blobbity bloobity bleep, Elon Musk, yes, you could. And the ludicrous thing about it is, if you build it with the right physical configuration, it's almost like you can hot hold it, or you can draw power off of it, and it'll load follow. You don't even have to necessarily model, well, if I pulled off this much, what would happen? You would want to, but to a certain extent, it balances itself like a spring, like a weight on the end of a spring. It's so ludicrously simple relative to so many other things we do.
We should start a Kickstarter.
I mean, the ecosystem of startups, is already there. But No, but we should start a public awareness campaign about it so that people know about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which we're doing.
We just need to enlist some of our 2D friends to make zines. Everyone loves a zine.
Yeah, no, zines are good. Yeah, they have staying power.
I like zines. I like a good zine.
But it's there. It's not. These are not black boxes. These are not mysterious things, and they don't require. It's not like fusion or whatever, where you say, "Well, we're really working on a breakthrough." There's no breakthrough about building artificial kelp. You're going to do it or you don't. I think I said one thing at the end of the anti-industrialization was people decide beforehand what's too expensive and what isn't.
Yeah.
Like I don't know the last time that major infantry fighting infantry military engagements was decisive militarily. Maybe World War II. When you see I think the United States has an army. It's an emotional support army. It's there to make people feel weirdly nostalgic and good about their nostalgia for a type of military engagement that is as relevant as the light chariot or elephants or the bow and arrow. So if you're going to have people pretending to do this with guns and take ground as an infantry thing, hey, bring out the light chariot too. I don't give a fuck. Bring out the trireme and try ramming ships into each other. I mean, and it's like, wait a minute, Adam, what are you saying? And I'm saying, like, hey, you ever heard of the Janissaries in the Ottoman Empire? They had like halberds and muskets into the 1820s. And they sat around and they just sucked up federal money, the central government's money in Constantinople. It's like, why do you have a halberd in the 1820s? Well, I don't know. And then there was a sultan. It was called the Auspicious Incident. And they got rid of their Janissaries, and we aren't able to do that. We won't even be able to do that. So But yeah, infantry battles. Are you fucking kidding me? It's over. These are like we're an empire of nostalgia. Like, wouldn't it be great if we could bring back the British Empire? No. Stop doing it. Why would you ever have a base overseas, whereas the only thing that matters is your industrial capacity? This is what China has understood. They are the military supplier for the United States. Our overseas military bases are their overseas military bases because our money is going to their economy to make the goods and products supplying our military. They're skimming off the top of our military. Imagine if you took the British Empire.
All the while
you took the
saber rattle and pretend that they're our greatest threat. Or
you
whatever.
took the British Empire and turned it inside out. The money now flows from the center to the colonies. Okay, cool, bro. Do you know what these overseas military bases in Guam and what's the one in the Indian Ocean? It's that island, Juan Garcia something. That's not it. Do you know what they're defending in the homeland? They're defending homeless camps and a drug problem and a country that can't handle COVID. That's what they're defending. They're not defending a shining city on the hill. They're defending a homeless camp in a pit. It's so fucking good. Dude, kudos to China. Hell yeah. They saw it. They dismembered it. They moved on. Like, so that's the core of it. Like, how do you... the means of production, your energy source, your means of environmental protection, the middle and upper classes that you are defending. Like, if you're an average Chinese engineer working in Shenzhen or something, you're going like, oh, well, this is very cool. All the money of the world is cycling through us. Neat. But we're not becoming financialized. We still have all the industrial plant and capacity at the ground level. And do you know what I think? I mean, I check on their newspaper, and in terms of messaging and intent and motive, it's very geared towards environmental protection. This isn't a setup. I'm not ambushing you, but you talked about how do you know what lever to pull and not? Well, at the fundamental level, it's motive as a conscious human mind. It's just that. Like, maybe I can screw up. Maybe I can make honest mistakes. Maybe I got the science wrong. Maybe I shouldn't have helped save this one species. Or maybe I shouldn't have put a rest area for a migration here. It screwed things up too much. But my motive truly, really, truly was sincere. You can make it, then you can make an honest mistake and correct the mistake. But the motive of the Western colonial world is not sincere. That's why we exist, to make billionaires. They exist to do something else.
It's the only thing we make anymore, apparently.
Yeah, you talk to people and they're like, I don't understand
Even
why
just today, Katie was like, she picked up some toy or something. Is anything not made in Shenzhen? I was like, no, I can't think of anything.
Yeah.
Maybe Fords. And then I thought, for all I know, there's some Ford factories in Shenzhen too. I'm not sure, but
I mean, it's really quite something. And I mean, the other thing is, like, we've talked about the Southern Song dynasty before, but you don't have to switch to fossil fuels in order to industrialize. You can do it just with specialization, economic specialization, and optimization in a local area. So the ceramic works at Jindabyun, they made the imperial ceramics very famous. They did this in the year 1000 AD, right? And a little bit afterwards. It has to do with specialization and industrialization and long distance travel. It does not have to necessarily have fossil fuels. Any energy source can do industrialization.
Interesting.
Fossil fuels just really amplify. Any energy source amplifies it and pushes it in that direction. Right. So if you're going to talk about, like,
makes it real easy.
Yeah, they have had 800 years ago, they started industrialization. They did. Their salt works, their iron works, their ceramic works. That's the three I can imagine. Like silk, kind of. Silk requires so many mulberry trees; it's really distributed, so silk never industrialized in that sense. So it's not just a matter of finding a higher and higher quality density, a higher density energy
fuel source, right?
Right, because then if you have a really high density source, but then you just dissipate it into non-industrial applications, it'll just dissipate, into, I don't know, locals fighting each other or transportation networks. So they have an 800-year head start in how to be industrial and what to do about it, unlike the West, which just kind of stumbled into colonialism and then industrialization and does not know what to do with it. And we've hit a brick wall. We don't know what to do.
Turns out we weren't very good at it.
No.
We had a little bit of a run where it looked like we might be doing something there.
Yeah. And like now, speaking of dissipating a high density energy source, we dissipated all the fossil fuels to the edge of our society. But now it can't hold. It can't make it to the edge because the quality of energy resource at the center, this is peak oil, can't even make it all the way out to the edge of that society and back. Like, I can tell you for a fact, my parents living in a small town in Montana under quarantine because of coronavirus and things like that, that town is dead. It's done. That's a town at the periphery, even though it's, in the center of a continent. All the peripheral areas of our society are dwindling away and it's pulling back. And so you're literally seeing, we've been watching it for a long time, but literally depopulating because of a lack of enough high density energy resource.
Just doesn't have enough inertia to get all the way out and also all the way back.
Yeah. And what that translates into in terms of human behavior is it's not economical to transport goods and services to small town America. So you're either going to move to the big city or stay there and wither and die, right? Why would you ever transport a truck full of...
Well, isn't that happening everywhere, though? The sort of urbanization?
No. Well, yes and no. It's conflating two different things.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I conflated, small town America. Leaving small town America because those small towns were dying with sort of a...
Right. Because, I mean...
countryside to big city sort
of
arrow.
Yeah. So, and the other thing, the other way of thinking, bringing this back around again is the boots on the ground efforts to protect the environment happens in the small towns in the countryside. Mm-hmm. And so if you have a recycling mechanism of pulling the wealth from your big cities back up into the countryside, then they can afford to do the work of environmental protection. And this is really basic stuff like watershed protection, right? We're not going to cut down our trees. We're going to plant more. And so your rivers will run cleaner, things like that. You can only do that if you have a high enough density energy source and that mechanism at the same time. Otherwise, the big cities will devour your countryside, which is another thing that's happening here because we have neither. We don't have a mechanism for getting wealth back up into the provinces, so to speak. Provincial towns, poor provincial towns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, poor people need to be employed with the excess receipts of industrialization to do environmental protection in the small towns and in the countryside. Otherwise, you have neither countryside nor small town nor eventually big city.
Nor
eventually a
environment. Yeah.
Any specifics in the notes?
I mean, plenty, but no.
No.
Oh, dead cows is fun.
Oh, yeah.
That was a fun one.
Yeah.
Like that one.
I mean...
Sinking dead cows?
Yeah. Take the place of whales.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Or like big blobs of fat, because whales have really thick blubber.
Right.
You can't just throw a cow down there. proportionally the same.
Yeah.
Even though they're closely related phylogenetically.
Right.
Hey-o!
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
Artiodactyla, or what? Ceto-artiodactyla, yeah.
Yeah, we got all kinds of stuff in here. I don't know if it bears.
Yeah.
I mean, ultramathic rock. That's just a nice word.
Oh, yeah.
I mentioned that a couple times.
Yeah. We have enough of that at the surface. We can.
Jaguars in Colorado River Delta.
There used to be that, yeah. Yeah. There used to be jaguars in Texas and Arizona. Maybe Utah.
2 flavors of fish. You were talking about something and something. The ones that spawn here go there. Or spawn
catadromous
there.
and anadromous. Yeah. That would be one you'd have to be very careful about. Like, you could really fuck things up.
Of course.
But it might be a good idea.
Well, and who knows? Even the cow, like you said, cows aren't whales. Like, that might be.
Yeah.
Who knows?
But
Hard
honestly, like, if New Zealand had big coho or king salmon runs, I don't see any problem with that. I don't think it would fuck up their ecosystems, but you would have to check. You'd have to look at a freshwater stream and be like, hey, if there was king salmon coming up here and spawning, would it kill all the native freshwater fauna because of too much biodegradable oxygen demand, BOD load? Would it? Do the work, but have the right motive. You're trying to increase the flourishing of all life.
Lifefulness.
Yes, maybe it would feed the kiwi
call it
birds.
lifefulness.
Yeah, maybe
Kiwi birds. They don't need help, do they? They're eating livers out of sheep.
No, that's a different. That's the Kia.
Kia. Oh no.
Yeah,
sorry.
that's the
I was
parrot.
thinking of the Kia. Yeah.
Kiwis are the.
Oh, they're flightless. Right.
Yeah. They
Sorry
got the
about-
little long noses.
yeah.
They eat worms.
You said kiwi. I heard Kia.
Oh yeah. Kia,
On
yeah,
accident. Both both kiwi birds, though, right?
Yeah, both
Yeah.
from New Zealand. Yeah. I've actually met New Zealanders in
Oh,
the flesh.
in
They
the
exist.
flesh.
Yeah.
I
There's
thought
less than
they-
like 4 million Kiwis in the world.
Wow.
It's a tiny itty bitty country.
A rare bird.
Yeah. We took him to the National Bison Range in Montana, next to my home, and a big herd of bison came around our car, and the lady freaked the fuck out. Like, she was trying to retreat to the center of the car as the herd parted. I mean, they were rocking our car.
Yeah.
I was totally fine with it. Like,
Right.
this is cool. They're big cows, kind of.
Right.
Although, and it was
They're
big
big, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Would have thought it.
Friends of my parents.
That's great. I mean, I could look through.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if there's any more gems, we're at 112. So.
I mean, there's gems, but even back in the beginning, you made the point that a lot of these things are basically non-capitalizable.
Yeah.
And I wondered, is that a feature or a bug? Some people might think we need to appeal to investors and entrepreneurs. Like, is that the way to do it? Or is it nice to just forget all about?
Yeah, it's not a bug.
No.
It's a feature.
That's
like,
a feature.
the investors are sitting there. They're aristocrats. All investors are aristocrats. They'll drink the blood of humanity dry. So just you eventually have to. Just
Who
be
needs them? Except for breakfast.
I honestly wish I could make them appeal to more. If they had a broader sense of history, and I could appeal more to their own self-interest and be like, look, you're going to fuck up so bad that the common people will put a dictator over everybody, and then you're just as fucked as the common people, but they won't do it. They cannot. So they'll sit there and destroy a central government, taking control of it, and then go, oh, what happened? Rome did. All those families, they destroyed the livelihood of the common people and then wondered how could Augustus have happened, and then Nero killed them all. Hilarious. It's the funniest thing. Oh, I'm a loyal subject of the emperor. He just ordered you to commit suicide. Shit. Well, get away from the center of power. They can't help it. They can't fucking... You are watching it happen in real time. Aristocrats killing democracy. That is literally what's happening. Mark Zuckerberg is going to end up with his flabby head on a pike, Well, but I was a billionaire, and
does not compute.
Yeah. I was a billionaire and I just wanted to have all the powers of a government without the responsibility or accountability. Oh, okay, bro. That makes you a criminal and bye. You know, like, it's just that what a good place.
Yeah, let's get out.
Okay.
Before I tell you my movie idea.
Okay.